Okay, so the time has come for me to reveal what it cost me to install 2 EV batteries on my house and that solar inverter. Let's just remind ourselves, we've got 120 kilowatt hours of storage in two 60 kilowatt hour batteries. That's a big amount of storage for, if I'm honest, a completely average 3-bed semi with a little garage attached to it as well. Okay, and the inverter on that is a 30 kilowatt inverter that has the 2 battery inputs. It's got the option to put 3 different sets of solar onto that. That inverter, as far as solar is concerned, is massively oversized for what I have here. The property just isn't big enough to maximize it, but it's big enough to maximize our battery. Now, I've been putting this off because it does come with a big amount of cost, which I have been burying my head in the sand with to a degree. So why don't you let me know in the comments at this stage, pause here, have a think about it, and let me know what you expect it to cost for this installation. We'll go over a spreadsheet and we'll talk about some of the different things. There will also be links in here to most of the parts that I've ordered. If you plan on doing anything like that yourself, then all the information is there for you in the description below. We'll get back to that later too. Okay, so on the laptop here, got myself a spreadsheet and I've redacted the total till the end. So to start off with, my inverter was £2,747 and 81 pence. There we are, nice and specific. Big inverter, way more expensive than a single phase inverter. You can pick up 10 kilowatt inverters for a lot cheaper, under the £1,000 mark. Now my first battery I bought for £3,800. Now at the time I thought I had a good deal on that one, and that was, I think most on eBay seem to be wanting about £7,000, but I soon discovered that they're living with their heads in the clouds if they think they're going to get that sort of money. Local to me, there was a breaker's yard who was willing to take £4,000, but that was a 55 kilowatt, the earlier generation LFP, and I wanted the 60 really. Now, that battery did come with about 4,000 kilowatt hours, so if I remember right, I'll put it up on the screen, but it's around 80-ish charges. So it effectively, that battery is brand new. It was a 2022 and I bought it in 23, so I think it had been on the road for 11 months and had 4,000-ish kilowatt hours. So compared to the price of the car new, I think that's still quite good. The second battery, now this is a bit more complicated. That was a sponsored video and it was a battery that was 0% state of charge. So there was chance that that wasn't going to get revived. I brought that when I was looking for a PCS and I thought, there's a good chance we can get this pack to work. We can raise it from its 0%. But if it is damaged, we can make some content around that. And I could just use the PCS out of it, which I would have had to have spent 500 quid on as well. I also chose to pay that on my credit card, which resulted in some exchange fees from euros. And I could have saved at least £60 if I'd have just done a bank transfer with that one. Then battery one, going back to battery one, this is the way I've ordered it. It cost me around £200 to collect that. I had to hire a van, hired a Luton van with a tailgate. My theory being that I could just lift it up using jacks onto a couple of carts and drop it down. It did work, you just need an extra pair of hands to help. Then we've got the replacement PCS, which I described. That's cost me £500. If I'd have waited around, then no doubt I could have got that cheaper. I think you can pick those up if you wait around for about £300. But I didn't want to stop the content. I didn't want to slow the content down. So 500 quid from a garage that only wanted cash. Yeah, that was an experience. I had to show them how to take the battery apart, how to get into it, and what you needed to undo. They didn't actually have the tool, which I'll get to later, to get inside that battery. And then we've got the Stark CRM. That comes to £497.07. Again, complicated because there was a sponsored video there, and just to level with you, one of those was sent to me for free. That's right, for free. But I would have paid for it anyway. It just worked out that I was really behind the product. And Johan was willing to send me that. I then had to buy 2 pyro fuses, but not for each battery. So battery 1 had to have a new pyro fuse because some airbags had gone off in the crash. Generally, airbags off means pyro fuse needs replacing. You can easily tell that by it saying 1 volt on the battery emulator, despite all the cells being normal voltage. Running that battery without the PCS and manually controlling the contactors, because I was looking for other options outside of replacing that PCS, and it actually, the BMS blew the fuse itself. It effectively thought that the contactor was welded closed because it was sensing that current was able to flow when it shouldn't have been. So there you go. The Tesla pack still using its safety features. We then got the AC isolator to the inverter, £23.56. A couple of DC isolators. Now I had those. They were cheap. They are good isolators. They're just old stock. We then got a couple of DIN rail enclosures, which I've used to mount the Stark. Now they're a bit small for the isolator as well, but I've got those off Amazon. We've then got the fuse holder enclosures. So as soon as we come out of the battery, we want to fuse down to our DC cables. This is just a safe method of reducing the limit of current that can come out of that battery and keeping everything safe. You definitely want that before you step down a cable size. So those were 1894. That's for the 2. I then have a couple of fuses which I purchased. Is it DF Electronics? I can't remember now. Again, I can put those in the description. But I ordered a couple of fuses, fuse holders, and actual fuse cartridges. 22 by 51, I think, the fuses. And I'm using 63 amp fuses. Despite pulling 50 amps from the inverter or to the inverter and back and forth, if you run a 50 amp fuse at 50 amps, it's only rated to do that for a couple of hours, so you overrate. But it's still plenty to have the cables protected. Okay, and then I've got a couple of 32mm glands, and that takes our orange high voltage cables from the Tesla pack and brings them in to that enclosure. We've then got some smaller glands, few glands for each battery. That takes our 10mm cables out from that fuse enclosure onto the inverter. We've then got some rubber feet that I use to mount the initial pack. So I've just been looking for my glasses and they're right here. Anyway, getting back to this, let's take a tiny bit more out. £23.97 for the 2 smaller ones. I used one of the bigger ones, £26.40. They came with a little spirit level, which was almost pointless because it's just set in the rubber and the rubber can kind of vary, but it wasn't relevant to me anyway. You're gonna level it from what's below it effectively. Okay, and then I ordered a load of different pieces of Unistrut and Unistrut fittings, so 90 degrees. We've got 7290 for the larger Unistrut. That was all taped together at the beginning of the project. For mounting the front pieces on, I then used some of the smaller Unistrut, 41 by 20 or 22. We got some 10 of the 90s, so the 90 degree Unistrut brackets, £22. The channel Ds, so that's they mount into the Unistrut rails, and then we mount our bolts through that, the M12 30mm bolts. Again, there's loads of those left, and washers. Or loads of those because I had to buy a big box. We've also got our basket tray. Now, this comes in 3-meter lengths, and I've got tons of this left. I ordered way too much, but £11.94 on this project. And the brackets, which I got from CEF, I wanted nicer brackets for that than just standard. Flexible conduit, so I've used that to bring the 12 volts from our battery into our electronics, so our Stark, just to tidy up some of the cabling. I got that from Screwfix. Now then we move on to sort of the battery covers and things. So I used a load of insulation, £19 there, to keep the battery warm in winter. So this is a testing thing really. So far I found 10 degrees above the temperature that it actually is outside when it's operating, but I'll put a video out about temperatures. We will look at water cooling later down the line. We've still not come up to summer temperatures, so moving a bit of heat away from the battery might be quite useful there. So the battery covers themselves, all of those APC panels, They came to £292.70. And we've got the semi-transparent light covers, £18.12. Most of these things will include postage if they were posted to me. I then got a load of magnets from AliExpress, £29.58. I didn't use them all, I've got a load spare. And the Sikaflex 221, I've used about a tube and a half, but I've got two tubes here which I ordered from Amazon, 20 quid. And then into cabling, we got 2.5mm twin and earth cable, 10 meters of that, 1695. The 60mm 5 core, so that's from our consumer unit through to our inverter, goes with the isolator in between. I've put down 2 meters, I didn't use that much. We've got 10 meters of solar cable, the 10mm solar cable, and we've got the high voltage connector from the Tesla Model 3. Now that price there varies dramatically. That is a genuine Tesla part. I used the cable that came from the all-wheel drive pack. It's longer, and there's one that's designed to go all the way to the front of the vehicle to power the front motor. That just means I've got way more cable. I did cut that a bit too short, not expecting the second battery, so I'll probably end up ordering another one of those at some point to lengthen the cable for our second battery, but I'm going to wait until the frame is in place. And then I've got some Cat 7 cable. Why Cat 7 and not just shielded Cat 6? It's just what I had. And that deals with the comms between the battery and the inverter, or the Stark and the battery. Then we got lighting. So I had a IP65 box off Amazon, I think, $7.99. The Quinn LED, so that has 4 LED channels. Putting 3 of those to use. We could maybe use one for the second battery. Who knows? There's options, but that was £43.15, and that, I think that was in dollars, so it had to get translated. We've then got some LED strip channel, £21.28, so that covers the sides. And I think there's a bit there. There might be a little bit more that goes for the front lights as well. And then the strip itself, the LED strip, let's round that up to 30. Because I've not used the full 10 meters. But I did end up needing a bit more than the 5 meters. Okay, and then a recent addition is our CAN isolators, trying to avoid the issue of damaging the Stark because of Fox creating a ground loop through the CAN bus. Don't ask how that would damage the Stark or the LilyGo and not the inverter itself. I don't know. But they were ordered from AliExpress. Then we got cable lugs. So a load of cable lugs. I use these for earthing the battery and earthing the inverter. So I've got £3.26 pack ordered from Screwfix. I brought a lead acid battery just to make life simple. And again, this is for the low voltage. So the PCS, the power conversion system in the battery, outputs 14-ish volts. So just a dumb lead acid battery, it will just sit at its maximum voltage. Maybe the battery won't like that long term, but it's easier than relying on a small lithium pack, which I've got to keep balanced. A lead acid can just do its job. So that was the smallest I could buy at Halfords at the time. These probably should be in the other section. So the capacitor, which I've put in with my battery fuses, I've ordered 2 of those, £30.81 from RS Components. We've got the 50mm joiners for the negative side. So this changes our Tesla power cable into our solar or our 10mm battery cable. So those are £17.42 for the 2 of those. Then got the Tesla connector. So I've ordered a couple of these, and in fact I do have spares. These are the X098, I think it's called, but it's the connector for the comms, the BMS, and a couple of onto the battery. And that came with the pins that it needed for that too. Then we have Modbus communication for the inverter. This was ordered off AliExpress, £14.25. It's really important to me, and it was one of my key things that I was looking for when I was ordering this particular inverter, to find an inverter that I could control through Home Assistant. And again, there's another video talking about Home Assistant, how I manage it all. But I wanted to be able to control it through Home Assistant. And for a time, this was the only way to force charge and discharge this battery. Basically, the inverter I chose, the H3 Pro, is fairly new. It had only been out for about a year, I think, at the time of filming, original filming. Fox ESS hadn't actually developed the front end to be able to force charge and discharge from the app or from the web page. It was there behind the scenes because you're obviously able to do it through Home Assistant, but Home Assistant for me allows me to log all the data, add it up, consider its use, how we've used the things. And to me, I'm not very good at managing the data necessarily, but Home Assistant does that for me. And from time to time, we can look at that and share that and take some lessons. There's then a load of random things like the pack of resistors, the Wagos, cable ties, and so on. I haven't put a value on these. I have them in stock already, but there we are. So there are probably a few things I've missed, and we can definitely add a little bit more on for the frame for the second battery, but at the time of recording this, I don't have that information to share with you. But what do you think? All of that list together there, how much do you think that cost? Well, let me change the colour of this box to black. Should we change it to red? Okay, so that's £10,719.59. How close were you? Did you expect it to be more? Maybe less? You can probably add on another 500 quid, so £11,200. That's a whole lot of money right there. But when you consider what we've got, that is pretty impressive. Now, I put together a quote for how much, basically the battery and the inverter, if I'd have gone through my trade account and ordered a similar equivalent amount of batteries. Now, the maximum that Fox ESS allow you to put with this inverter using their stacks of batteries, I believe is around 85 kilowatts, £26,566.80 with VAT. Now, I'm comparing it with VAT because breaking it down and the way I've done it, I've had to pay VAT. But that's kind of crazy, isn't it? That's a lot of money for an install. You know, it's kind of funny because I accidentally added this into a quote in my basket, and the next day I very quickly got a call from the company asking if there was anything that they could do to help me with my order. I wonder how many they sell of the 30 kilowatt inverters with the maximum battery. I can't imagine it's that many, hey? And that's less storage. Okay, it's an easier system, but this isn't about producing an easy system. I tend to do things the hard way if I can learn something about it. And this has been a YouTube project. This has been an opportunity for me to learn about second life batteries, to demonstrate that it's a viable option to the world, to demonstrate that if it's done right by professionals, if it's done safely, this could be the case. Now, I don't necessarily feel that putting them on the side of your house is a good idea. The weight is ridiculous. We're well under half the cost there. Now, I've not included labour. As I said, I do not know how to value the labour on this. It's the sort of project where you might have to do some updating, some tinkering. Things might change. So it's difficult to put a price. How do you put a price on moving a half a ton battery? How do you put a price on moving 2 half a ton batteries? Yeah. I also needed a bunch of tools for this, so maybe we should add these into the project cost as well. But these are things which I potentially can use again. We had the engine crane, which I've thought about hiring one, but considering I'm going to be moving the second battery around and it might help in the future with other batteries, who knows. Anyway, £187 in an engine crane and a little over 109 in lifting chains. I then had crane hire. So the first battery, I got that craned into place. So I got it on those wheels and got it into the garage, and I'd arranged with the guy, and that all happened incredibly fast. It was the sort of job where, you know, just squeeze me in. It won't take too long. It took a little longer than they expected, but they were just craning it in, and that came to £100. I couldn't believe it. In fact, I think I gave the guy a good tip as well. So yeah, I haven't even added that on here. You then need the tool to open the penthouse. Now, you can do this with a pair of grips, but just get the tool. So that's a 5-lobe tool. The link will be in the description for that. I then brought another crimping tool from Screwfix, £21.99, and £30 in trolleys. Now I've got myself a little note here that this includes VAT. If you've got a solar system being installed in the UK, you'd basically have the VAT at 20% knocked off, and that makes a huge difference. All you need to do is have some solar panels installed and then all the other stuff underneath it. So basically your install cost from your installer won't include VAT. So that can make a huge difference. But I've used the cost in my trade account with VAT just to make it easier to compare. But obviously with this sort of install, I don't think we're getting the VAT knocked off. So if I change the colour on that section comes to £454.78. As I say, a lot of that is tools which I can use in the future, but most people probably don't have some of those things, so they will need to potentially buy those things. Your usage would vary. Now, of course, this whole journey, in knowing that I wanted to install a battery, I got my battery and I waited on the inverter until I knew for sure that I was definitely going to get a 3-phase upgrade. Now, the biggest saving grace for this whole project for me is the fact that I live in a house that was built in the 1960s in the UK, back when somebody decided that it was a good idea to share the power between two houses, so the cable comes out of the road to my neighbour's house and then to my house. Now, in the modern day of using energy differently with EV chargers, heat pumps, all that sort of stuff, that potentially could overload the cable that's sharing between our two houses. So with that in mind, unlooping is happening, so where the energy companies are splitting up those cables, and it means, for me, fortunately, the least disruption for my neighbour. All it resulted for them was just snipping the cable that goes to my house. If it was the other way round, they would have had to have a new cable and I would have just ended up with the existing one. So because of that, it meant the question came up, well, why don't you install 3-phase while you're there? And if you want to check out that video and you've not seen it, check out the video all about that, where I explain how you might be able to do that for yourself and get that for free. That's right, for free. There are some details in there that could help and some documents which you might be able to share. Even if that's not your DNO, you can say, well, look, this DNO is forward thinking. So my 3-phase upgrade, again, no labour, but the consumer unit came to £396.17. That includes all of the switch gear inside it, the RCBOs. So that was a massive upgrade for me. My old consumer unit was a little bit outdated, to say the least. It had one RCD that shared half of the circuit. So half of my circuits weren't protected from touch shock. Now, absolutely fine for it to be like that because it's an existing install and it doesn't have to meet the latest regs. But I wanted it to be upgraded anyway at some point. It was always on my agenda, and this was a perfect opportunity to upgrade it to 3-phase. Now, that also, I've got myself a note here, that gave me the ability to install a 3-phase EV charger, which is now in place. And again, there's something I've done quite different there, and it's actually not on an improved list, but I've got it approved, and there's another video there if I get time to put that out. Okay, so then I have 2 extra bidirectional RCBOs. Now, I bought these afterwards in addition at £32. So RCBOs need to be able to take current the other way for inverters and that sort of thing. And most of them, you'll find, don't do that, at least not the standard ones. I then have 5 meters of the 25mm 5-core SWA at £124. So that's, in a previous video, I fed under the floor, my suspended floor. Yet another advantage to living in a 1960s house with suspended floors. Gives me access to run all sorts of cables. We then got a fuse switch isolator for £200. We then have meter tails. I needed some more of those to connect everything up. 5 meters, 15 quid. We have earth sheathing, £4. It's crazy how much of that you end up needing in a 3-phase board when you're just having longer runs of cables internally. We've got some twin and earth at £10 and trunking, which goes above and takes all of our cables into that consumer unit. And then we got some glands there for £5. So the total cost, again, there's possible that I'm missing things, but the total cost for my 3-phase upgrade comes to £796.17, which for a consumer unit upgrade, I don't think that's that bad at all. I used a fuse box consumer unit on the cheaper end, but perfectly adequate for what I need. So I haven't totaled these things up. Well, there you have it. That is the total cost for my battery install. Now, I reckon that if we were to do all this over again, including the extra parts and tools that I needed, I reckon we could do this for £10,000. Now, hear me out. One of my subscribers, you know who you are, was able to pick up in the UK, just by being patient and waiting, he picked up a battery for £1,900. So if I got both of them for that money, that's a couple of grand knocked off what I already paid. And if I was more patient with the PCS or waited on the PCS, you know, when we think about it, 10 grand potentially, obviously that's not what I paid, but first time round, rushing for the videos of course, 10 grand for 30 kilowatts of energy being able to put in and out of the battery and 120 kilowatt hours of storage. That is crazy. How do those costs stack up to you? Do you think it was money well spent? Do you think that the money could have been spent better in some other way? Well, let me know in the comments. And as I mentioned at the start, tell me how far off you believe that was to the cost that you thought I spent. Well under the prices that I would have paid if I had gone for Fox ESS own equipment entirely. So used EV batteries represent a massive saving, and that has been the main contributor to the entire cost. Everything else pretty much is much of a muchness. Now, projects like this cost a massive amount, and that is quite a figure that we've come to there, isn't it? But you can actually help out by liking, subscribing, telling your friends about these videos. You can help the channel grow and help it to justify expensive projects like this. Also, check out the links in the description to some of the products that I used in this video, and if you're going to purchase them, then please purchase them through those affiliate links. But you know, there's another way that you can help. It's by considering our sponsor this week. Now, I've given a lot of my data away to you in this video, and I feel a little bit uncomfortable about sharing that finances of this project, but I've chose to give you that data. But a lot of our data on the internet just isn't under our control. It ends up on databases and can result in spam calls, spam emails, and at worst, fraud, and our data just not being used in a nice way, being used against us. I've tried to get my data taken off databases in the past, and it just becomes a problem. It's very difficult to get them all to take your data off. So Incogni is sponsoring this video, and they've given us a massive discount in the description below. You can actually get them to do the work of removing it for you. And if you just check them out, maybe consider opening an Incogni account and considering their service, then you will actually be helping this channel to grow. Thank you guys. Till next time, Battery Man out. You know, my in-laws were asking us if we're going on holiday this year, to which my wife immediately said, "We can't. You spent all the money on batteries." She's not lying. I gotta thank my wife. Her help, it's absolutely amazing. But yeah, we spend a lot of money on batteries. But it is still cheaper than the solar install that I had a number of years ago and paid a company to do. A dodgy solar install at that. That puts it into perspective.